Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy for nerds by nerds. I'm hanging out with Alo Clark today. How are you doing today?
Hi, Dave. I'm really well. How are you?
Good. Your partner had reached out to me about Tavern Tales, which is a project that you guys are working or have put together.
Mhm.
And so I think the name of the company is End Plan Games.
E-playing games.
E
Yeah.
Plan Games.
So
Okay.
it's escape playing games. Colin and Mike, who founded the company, both worked in TV for a long time before, and I think the name emerged, if I'm right on this, from them both just complaining about the work hours and looking for a way out. And
Yeah.
so they decided to form a gaming company together. So they called it Escape Plan.
Oh, nice. I thought it was just a cool name. Um,
Mm.
but now it's even cooler. although,
It's literally a way out.
although I mean, making a living in RPGs is not exactly easy. So it may be one of the worst escape plans ever. But it can be done.
There you go, Mike and Colin. Listen to the man.
Yeah, yeah. There's the owner of Frog God Games says if you want to make $1 million in the RPG business, just start with two. So, so how did you get
Well, I
involved,
think
and what is the project?
so. Tavern Tales is a DM toolkit, essentially. The thought behind it was DMs are crazy busy, particularly if you're homebrewing. You're having to come up with this intricate, amazing world that your players are going to ruin every week or every few weeks or whatever it is, on top of whatever you're doing to keep a roof over your head. So the idea of Tavern Tales was to provide um, an anthology of DM's tools to help for those weeks where you're just like, guys, I'm slammed. I haven't been able to do it this week. Let's postpone. Instead, what you can use is Tavern Tales. So Tavern Tales is a just shy of 300-page book. I think we come in at 296. And it is a fully fleshed out tavern. So this is Tavern Tales Volume 1. So the tavern is called A Trip Away Inn, and it is run by ex-circus folk who have run away from the circus to build something a bit more brick and mortar. And so it is 5 NPC staff members, and then we've got 14 quest givers who are the tavern locals. So the idea is if you're running the session and you're pushed for time, or you just want to explore the book, you have this one location that we've worked to be very location adjacent, location agnostic. So you can drop it in anywhere. It's a pretty standard. It could be anywhere. You don't have to be, flying through Githyanki space to find it. It can drop in, and you can deal with one or two or more of the NPCs who are in there looking for help. We've got adventures from, I think, level 1 to 13 available. And it's a space you can keep coming back to. You can keep building relationships. There's some interplay between the NPCs, but not so much that you need that in order to run it. We basically wanted something where a DM doesn't have to read 15 pages of lore on the blood war before they understand what's going on. It's a tavern, you drop it in, people need help. And then around that, we've got pub games. We've got the circus comes to town at one point if you want a sort of special event to happen, which is the circus from the owner's past. So there's some, politics and stuff you can play with
Some
that.
drama.
Yeah, exactly. But so we just wanted to create something that really helps out DMs. Mike and Colin have come up with this fantastic iconography system that is an attempt to improve on some of the gnarlier bits of going through a official book when you've just got no idea what page you're supposed to be on. So we've got this really clear iconography system that tells you this is all the traps, this is all the points of interest, and attached to all the maps that we have in it. And we've also got at various points what we're calling tapestry options. which are mostly applied to the individuals in the tavern, and they are the points at which we think it makes sense to weave it into the world you're running. So rather than say, this character is from the Broken Hand Thieves Guild, 300 years of master thieves camping out in a cave, we've gone, this person is a member of, or can be, a member of your local thieves guild, or this person who has some connections in the aristocracy, maybe they know your local noble. We've kept it quite open in that sense, so it can just weave into wherever you put it.
So, what is the expected runtime length of the adventures in Tavern Tales?
We've aimed for one shots or maybe a couple of sessions. That's sort of each NPC that will, that should be a complete adventure, from meeting them to running off to wherever they need you to get to coming back, looking at 1 or 2 sessions. So again, it can be very bite-sized. Is the sort of the goal. You could run the whole book as a campaign. That would be fun if it's just you put a tavern in the middle of the wasteland and this is the only happy hearth you can get to. That's absolutely something you could run, but we wanted something again where you don't have to constantly invest in it. You don't have to read the whole book before you run it.
What is your contribution to this project?
So I got on board in 2019 I know Mike because he ran a campaign for me and my wife and some friends in Chicago. He ran Curse of Strahd and made us all hate life for a while. So we met that way, and then through chatting with him, I learned he was writing a book, and he needed another writer. He said, we've got one more slot open, and he knew I was interested in writing, so he invited me to do that. I wrote the adventure, had a lot of fun with it, and sent it in. And then as the book started to take more and more shape, they kept inviting me to do more and more. So I've written, as well as that adventure, I wrote up all of the tavern NPCs, all of the staff NPCs, from specs they already had, which was quite fun, which was a sort of an exercise in giving voices and life to people who weren't your own creations, which was really cool. And then I wrote the circus event. We also have a bunch of merchant stalls outside. We've got 12 rotating merchant stalls that you can fill with, again, your own merchants if you want, or we've got 12 recommendations that can come and go. You can also run your own stall if you want to make a bit of cash on the side. There's mechanics in it for player run shops and how that might go. So I helped with that. And then I took on some editing work and helped put a couple of adventures in, and just sort of snowballed from there. I then proofread the whole thing as well. So I sort of was doing the final polishes on it. So it's been really fun to just get sucked in more and more and more. And we're really happy with it. I'm really excited to see what people think of it. We're really open to feedback. We really want to hear from the community, what people think of it. The PDF is now live, and the hardcover will be coming in a couple of months, with manufacturing and shipping being what it is in this world we live in.
Now, is this something that was Kickstarted, or did you guys self-publish?
Yes. So we had a lot of the work done beforehand, and then we went to Kickstarter. We hit our Kickstarter goal within 12 hours, which was huge. And then over the course of the month, we more than doubled what we wanted, which really gave us the space to get some more artwork in there, get some more options. We've got a menu that you can buy totally separate to the book, with some food and drink advice in it. We've got some really beautiful dice sets coming with it. We were able to add a couple more NPCs, and we were able to add 4 new backgrounds and 2 new whole subclasses as well. So in the book as well, we have the Owl Bear Tamer Ranger, which is sort of off the back of the circus animal handler model, where you start with an owlbear cub, and as you gain levels, the owlbear grows with you and gets more abilities. And then we have the ink warlock, where we've, again, from a sort of tattooed wonder model, it's a warlock who's made a pact with an ink demon, and so all of your tattoos take on magical shapes, and you have abilities tied to what tattoos you have. Not like the magic tattoos that came out in Tasha's, but you can manipulate your own tattoos. You can manipulate any ink you come across in the world. You can suck spells out of spell books. It's really fun, and it's going to annoy It's going to annoy your party wizard immensely because you can just empty their spell scrolls onto your arm, and then you have the spells and they don't.
Nice. No party tension there. It sounds like a great supplement in the sense that I like things that have that kind of utility and usefulness. Even without the short adventures, which is a great niche, because like Wizards has like the campaigns locked, right? Like you're getting 1 or 2 of them a year. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to even to get through one, let alone all of them. What they don't do is the smaller adventures. So I think there's like a lot of room for independent creators in that space. But I also like the idea of, here's a drop-in tavern and all the other stuff, the pub games, the event that you guys have added to it. Like, to me as a GM, that stuff is way more useful than a campaign setting and even the adventures. It's like even from like the big adventures they've done, like I would take, I ran an Underdark campaign. I didn't run out of Abyss, but I used out of Abyss for all the like bits of lore and information that you could just insert into your game.
Yeah, pulling bits out. Yeah, and utility was front and center for us. We didn't just want to put out a book of look how clever we are at D&D. Yeah. Look at all these magic items that we can kind of ruin your day with. We wanted it to be something that people will come back to, will use, rather than just, I think there's definitely a strong collector streak, and I think a lot of DMs, shelves getting more and more full of books and books, but we really wanted this to be a working tool, and I'm really excited about that. I think it's something I would, as a DM, it's something I would genuinely consider buying, which is something is really nice to say about something you have to market.
Yeah, for sure. When even like things that we make, it's like, well, hey, what can we do to like make the DM's life easier? And
that's exactly it. That's our guiding principle. How can we help the DM in this rather than make more work for you?
So do you have a favorite part of the book?
Ooh, that's a quick way to make enemies. So we had every adventure was written by a different writer, which is another really fun aspect of this, because you've got 14 different voices, 14 different ways into adventures, and without any manicuring, I think we've covered a lot of bases. We've got there's one really fantastic long dungeon crawl. We've got a lot of sort of more whodunit type stories. We've got a couple of romance stories, 1 or 2 that I think you could get through without any combat at all. If that's not your thing, I think you could social, investigate and persuade your way through the whole adventure if that's your thing. Do I have a favorite bit? I really enjoyed, as a writer, I really enjoyed writing the bits, funnily enough, that I didn't come up with the ideas for. That was a really nice challenge. We also have 4 local legends, as we're calling them, who are 4 NPC regulars in the tavern, who were proposed by our top tier Kickstarter backers. So as part of that top tier, they got to suggest a character who might hang around and a bit about them, and I wrote those as well. So working from these specifications and trying to get it to all wrap up was really fun. I really, really like the feel of the tavern that has been created by everyone who's contributed. It's a really warm, happy space. Like, without going into too much detail about the backgrounds of the people who started it, it's a place for it's a place for community, and it's a place that welcomes the people who've always felt a bit on the edges of society or have run away from what have you. And you definitely don't want to pick a fight with some of the people who work in there. I'll say that now. All the staff have stat blocks, and some of them are savage. I will let you know that. But it's a genuinely welcoming place. And I think if you're ever a bit too tired of campaigns that are all doom and gloom, or getting a bit edgelordy, you can bring this in for a very sort of the Shire Hobbiton type feel.
Don't mess with the carnies.
Don't mess with the carnies. No, never mess with carnies. That's a lesson for real life. They've seen everything and they know where to put you, so no one will find you.
Agreed. So tell me a little bit about the pub games. That's something I'm very interested in.
So we have mechanics for 7 games, and you're gonna push me to remember them all now. We've got Liar's Dice rules in there. We've got a sort of assault course that Flip, who is the owner, that they set up every year, I think, or however often you want to put it. We've got knife throwing. We've got rules for a high striker. Where you take the big mallet and hit it so hard and try and hit a bell at the top. So a lot of ex-Circus Games have been brought into the building itself. And then when if and when the circus comes to town, if you want to run that, we've got a bunch of Circus Games as well. So you've got Pet the Owl Bear, Feed the Owl Bears. You've got Granny Susie. You've got to huck a stick at an old hag, at a sort of wooden old hag's face, and try and win some money that way. Guess his weight, this kind of thing. So that was really fun, coming up with mechanics for just, again, little games that you could totally pull out and put anywhere else. We've written in the introduction, I think we put it almost as plainly as, if you want to use this stuff, do. If you don't. It is all designed to be pulled apart as benefits you. As I've said now, the DM is the focus of this book.
So I know you were kind of brought in, after the project was started, but do you know what the impetus for starting the project was?
Yeah, the impetus was, so an ongoing project with Escape Plan is a whole new TTRPG. They're putting the rules together for a Western game called To Live and Die in the West, and they put together the basic rules. They published the basic rules, and they just wanted to put it on the back burner for a bit to dig into something a bit more contained, and to produce something that had a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's a chance for us to get out in the space and show what Escape Plan can do, and that is an ongoing project to build. But everyone involved has been playing D&D for a long time. I think I'm probably the one who's been playing it the least. I started playing about 4 years ago, so I'm a 5e convert. I wouldn't know what a Thaco was, even if you did manage to hit me with it. This is the edition I've always played.
I don't think you're missing a whole lot with Thaco.
Well, I've been told. It's something actually I wonder about older editions. Is there anything from the older editions you think that is lacking in 5e? Anything you'd like to see them bring back?
It's a bit of a loaded question, right? Because there is things that I think we always miss from these earlier editions, but I guess there's accessibility issues, there's ease of play, problems with it. Like in previous editions, in 3rd edition, exotic weapons was a big thing, and it was kind of a nice flavor to the characters. A little bit of an upgrade over standard weapons, but usually it came with a cost. Like there was a resource that you had to expend to have that. Yeah, usually in feats or something of that nature. I feel like 5e did a really good job of capturing a lot of the things from previous editions and moving them forward. The minion rules from fourth edition, I kind of miss them, but they're also very easy to implement in 5e.
Sure.
Residium was an interesting concept that was introduced in 4e, which allowed you to take magic from an item and distill it to this stuff called residium that you could then use to put into a different item. So, like, if you got a magic, say you found the magic weapon of something that you don't use, you could transfer it into something you do use. Was kind of the idea.
But I mean, but as you say, even that you can just put into 5e,
yes.
Right? You could just decide that's a thing. So, like, are there any mechanical aspects you think 5e? Because I know that the big push with 5e was to dial back the crunch, push the role playing, and sort of say much more like use it or don't, have fun. That's the sort of driving force, which I think is huge and very sort of welcoming to people from outside who haven't been playing it for decades.
No, I feel like they really kind of nailed it with most of the rules, right? Like first and second edition was all about not so many a lot of rules, but the ones that they did exist were overly complex for complexity's sake. And it was also like sometimes you roll low, sometimes you roll high. There was no as a new player, you just had to like, am I rolling high or low for this one? Like, and that was kind of annoying. And in third edition, they streamlined that process a little bit, with you're always going to need to roll high, and they simplified the mechanics. But you were going to deal with +1s and +2s to ad nauseum in that edition. So 5e kind of really did a good job with doing that. And frankly, if someone wants to play D&D, it's more crunchy. Well, I guess there's Pathfinder, right? So you'd still even get that.
Yeah. I've never really understood the people who break down like, are you into the crunch or are you into the role play? Like, they're both such integral parts of the game for me. I'm definitely a story first player and DM, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't eyeing that 15th level ability where suddenly this comes online and I can, fly as well as, cast the spell. Like I think you're lying if you're not eyeing up the crunch list ahead of you and going, yeah, okay, I'll play a paladin.
Yeah, I mean they're both very integral to the game, because it's funny, like coming from earlier editions where I felt like the roleplay part of the game was a lot less emphasized and people didn't really get into it as much. And it also might even just be from the standpoint of someone who played as a much younger person who were interested in like what you could do and what you could build and fighting the monsters and getting the gold.
Mm-hmm.
The narrative elements for the groups that I've been involved with seem to have developed later, in life. And also coincided with the release of more editions of the game. So yeah, it's like the chicken or the egg. Sometimes it's hard to figure out which came first.
Mm.
Do you prefer running games as a GM or being a player?
I really love both, and I don't say that as a cop out. I say it because I think you get different things from both, and I think doing both makes you better at both as well. I think if you're a player, I really recommend spending a bit of time behind the screen. If you can play, you can DM. I really think that's the truth, and you just get a real sense of how much you can, as a player, I think, calls for scenes or like push the narrative yourself. I think sometimes, particularly with newer players, you've got there's a politeness that kicks in of like, the DM's the one running this. Like I'm going to react to what I'm given, but I should stay in my lane. And I think once you've DM'd, you're like, please guys, please tell me what you want to do. Please take the initiative, because that's great. That means we can run with it, and you're not pumping in air into a balloon that's just coming out the other side. Like, it's a real collaboration. And then conversely, once you're a player, you realize quite how much of all your DM anxiety just does not matter, because your players have no idea what is going on behind that screen. It could be a single blank sheet of paper, it could be a binder. You can play it off however you want. You can just roll with it, and your players will have a great time either way.
Have you branched out into other games yet?
A little bit. I want to play. I have a longer list of ones I want to play. I've played Call of Cthulhu, which I love, and have bought the books and want to kind of learn more about and learn to run. I would love to be a keeper for that, because I'm a huge Lovecraft fan. The works, not the man. I've played DCC once, which was really fun. It was just a meat grinder. Like, we all turned up with 3 characters because everyone was going to lose between 2 and all of them by the end. Played the Alien RPG that came out relatively recently from I'm trying to remember the publisher's name. I think it's a Scandinavian company.
Free League. That one was Free League, right?
That's it. Yeah. Free League, which is great. And tying into what you were saying in terms of, if you haven't got time to run a year-long campaign, that system, I think, is primarily built for 1 session, 2 sessions. And that was terrifying. Like, we really got into that. You're on a ship and everything starts to go wrong, and it's the time limit is a really big factor.
I haven't played it, but I did have someone telling me about it and breaking it down, and they said, like, the horror mechanics in that game are the best. I think they call it stress. Are the best they've ever seen. Yeah.
So the way the stress works is I think it's, if I remember, it's entirely a D6 system, and you roll you try and roll over your ability score, whether it's engineering or combat or whatever. And if you miss, you can push it. So you can add stress dice to your roll to kind of boost it, but that comes at a real cost as you go, because the more stressed you get, the more vulnerable you are and the closer you are to just keeling over, essentially. And stress dice can really work against you. So it's a very high pressured system. And I think the reason I really like both of those games is I like feeling kind of a bit more frail as a PC. Like, D&D is a game for superheroes, and that's amazing fun. Being able to run, jump, climb trees, throw fireballs, fly is amazing.
It's like being an 80s action hero.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but I mean, what is it if someone worked out that I think by level 6 you can fall out of a plane, hit the ground, and stand up and be fine. Like, you're unkillable. I have a party of 7 players right now, so talk of unkillable. I can't touch them. But with the games like Cthulhu and the Alien RPG, you have a real sense of your own fragility. Like, so you've got to come up with solutions to get away, to circumvent problems. And sometimes that's a lot more fun than, like, okay, I can wander into this group of bandits and I know if stuff goes wrong, I can handle it,
Yeah, sometimes it's about, like, figuring out different ways to challenge them. I had ran, like, it was this annual game we'd only play, like, the Thanksgiving Eve, and it was a Spelljammer game, and, like, I think that was, like, the first session, they were being attacked by another ship, and the ship used flail snails as catapult ammunition. So, like, the rock would land and break open, and then it was a flail snail, which was, like, 0 threat to the party, as they were, but they were a huge threat to the crew of their ship, so they had to deal with it regardless in order to deal with the main threat, or they could ignore them and deal with the main threat, but they wouldn't have any crew left. So they have to make these tough decisions. And then one of the players found, like, a really easy solution to defeat them, and they just pushed them all off their ship using telekinesis. Except for it was like after the encounter, they realized that the shells were worth a lot of gold. And, so like there's always other
Excellent. Yeah.
ways to kind of mess
Well,
with the
that's
players and
mean.
get them
That's
involved and challenge
cruel.
them.
I think that's something that's really helped me in my sessions. And if any of my players are watching this, cover your ears and la la la. But I know that in a combat where they line up on one side of the field, kobolds line up on the other side, or dragons line up on the other side, I'm not going to be able. They're gonna win that combat. That combat is going to be a victory. So the thing I've tried to implement is with every time we roll initiative, every time we go to the battle map, there is at least something else that they also have to deal with. Either a time commitment, someone's getting away and you also have to stop them, or the ground is unstable and people might be falling into a pit, or the enemies have split up and someone's got to go chase this group, someone's got to go chase this group, or there's something you've got to maintain or someone to protect. So there's always a secondary objective to just get that group of enemies to 0 hit points.
And that in itself is like just a great advice for GMing, and I think it just boils down to like just making your encounters more dynamic. And
yeah,
and that can work for the other pillars of the game as well, exploration and social encounters. You just need things going on for the players to engage with.
And I think especially if you know your players and your characters, like I love the what is it, bonds, flaws, I remember the short list. That's it. Yeah, all of those I think are a 5e invention, if I'm right, and are fantastic for like character work as a player. But as far as I'm concerned, as a DM, those 4 boxes are my players going, the weak spots in my armor are here, 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 here. They might as well all be labeled weaknesses, because when I get those character sheets from my players, it says, my bond is my family. Target family. My flaw is, I can't stand bullies. Put in lots of orphans and bullies. Like you can play off your character's most sort of committed traits like that, to just go, you put a situation in front and one of your players is going to go, no, not having that, can't walk away from that, I've got to deal with this, and now they're in.
Yeah, and it just more generically, that's just great advice, is figuring out what your players care about in the game and use that to kind of tweak them. And oftentimes when I'm running, I like to listen to the banter at the table and take notes from that, because oftentimes they will give you ideas when they're thinking out loud to each other that you can then implement
totally,
into the game.
Yeah, I'm just gonna write that down. There was a newspaper cartoon that has always resonated with me as a DM. It's a slightly weird tangent, but there was when one of the Mars rover robots went up, there was a newspaper in the UK that published a cartoon, and the cartoon was, you had the rover with its camera trained on a super futuristic Martian city, flying cars, shining towers, turrets, all this stuff, except standing between the rover and the city were 2 Martians with a drawing of blank desert holding it up to the camera, and wherever the camera moved, they just moved this picture.
Yeah, that's great.
And to me, DMing or GMing is that in reverse. Your player, there's just a barren wasteland out there. Nothing exists except what you are showing your players currently, or what your players are currently talking about. So once they move on, you have infinite matrix white space to figure out how to use what they've just done, behind them, as it were, to sort of move around and plug into what the plans you've got ahead, ways to punish them for decisions behind, loop stuff back around. You don't have to get into this locked space that I think some new DMs do, of like, but the trade routes from this city, they didn't meet that NPC. Well, then what am I going to do? Am I going to have to put him on a caravan and make sure he's in the next town? He's just in the next town.
Yeah.
Just move him. He lives there now and always has. I think that, and cluing into that freedom of movement behind the screen was really big for me in unlocking that sort of anxiety of how do I get everything I want in front of my players.
That makes me think of a popular saying, hindsight is 2020, and in real life we don't often get to take advantage of that. We can't move backwards. We can learn from those experiences, but we can't change them. We can't do anything with them. But in an RPG, you can say, well, this is what happened, and now you have the perfect picture. But oftentimes the players don't have that perfect picture, so you can just edit things and I do it all the time, in order to, like you say, he just lives in that other town now, there's an element that the players weren't aware of, which is going to make the story more interesting down the road, that I can just do now, because of what they've already done, because of what they've already experienced, and it's going to be way more meaningful for them now.
Totally. Like, your DM powers stretch backwards in time and players are stuck only moving forward.
Yeah.
So I have a governing principle that I sometimes use that is, I hesitate to say a trick. Again, my players, earmuffs, but it's what I call Schrodinger's helmet, which is, around session 4, they defeat the gang of kobold, they defeat the gang of gnolls that have mysteriously appeared in the middle of, where they shouldn't be, and decimated a town. And then on the horizon, just after they've defeated the kobolds, they look up and they see a mysterious figure in a masked helmet stare at them and then disappear over the hill. Now, and in a movie, the person in that helmet is predetermined, and it's the cliches. It's always their best friend, or it's a woman, because God forbid anyone with any martial prowess should be a woman. They're going to take the helmet off and do the hair flick. But in a TTRPG, there's actually no one under that helmet until they take the helmet off. So if they guess in session 4, oh, I bet that's that elf who was mean to us in the last town, and that is what you've been planning, you can go, no, it isn't anymore. You can completely change who that's going to be, or put someone in with no idea who it's going to be. Or you go into the town and a wood elf girl with flashing green eyes bumps your elbow and looks at you, with frustration. That is now a memory that you can use 30 sessions later. You can forget about that and then go, and then you bump into the wood elf girl with the flashing green eyes, and your players go, it's been a plan all along. But no, you've just plucked an element from their past and thrown it in.
Yeah, that is the benefit of us writing the story as we go. For sure. Hey, I just want a quick reminder, everybody, there are links in the description to check out Escape Plan Games, and also follow Ala on social media, as well as we have a Kickstarter going on that's already funded, and I feel obligated to mention the Mage Forge. You can check that out as well. So what are your plans going forward, now that this project is done? Do you have any plans to do anything else? Are you going to be working with Escape Plan in the future?
Yeah, so we've got 2 more books in the pipeline, sort of in the planning stages, one of which we're starting on now, which I'm going to be the project lead on, and I'm very excited about. We have, and then there are a couple of other things that are in early stages, and I'm probably not allowed to talk about fully yet. But yeah, Escape Plan is here to stay. Like, we really want to spread, and it's not just going to be Tavern Tales. We want to spread into all different parts of the TTRPG space. So can I talk about what's coming up next? I don't think I can. I know that things are in the works, and we will be coming to Kickstarter again in the not too distant future. We want to get the hardcover books out, when they come out, and give people a good time to kind of get through those. We really want to hear what people have to say about PDF that's out now. But yeah, really excited for the future. Really excited with where we're going.
Will you be working on the Western RPG?
That's a very good question. I haven't been part of that project yet, because this has been consuming this, and the beginnings of the next one have been consuming all of my time. I know that Mike has talked to me about, there is a module for it that he and I want to put our heads together for, because he's had a cool idea, and there's something we want to work on. And I would love to do that. I would love to spend some time with more non-D&D games. I love D&D, but I really want to play Blades in the Dark, which I've heard really fun things about. I really want to play Vampire the Masquerade. One of the other team at Escape Plan, and one of my players, the brilliant Paige Ford, who has written a bunch of adventures, go and find her on DM's Guild and others. She played a Jane Austen RPG recently, which she said was incredible fun.
Yeah.
And I'm fascinated to know how that works. If it's just you around the table sort of throwing one-liners at each other, I don't know how that fits into any kind of a story, but she said that was amazing fun.
Yeah, I've talked to a couple people about that one, because
Do you know what it's called? Because I can't remember.
What do you do
in
that game?
That was my first question, because nothing happens in a Jane Austen novel either. People get married eventually. That's the story of every Jane Austen novel. I enjoy Jane Austen books, but that's the plot. The joy of a Jane Austen novel is the voice of the narrator. It's the satire. So I'm fascinated to know what happens in that game. But if there's anyone out there who's played it, tell me, tweet at me. I want to learn.
So I guess you have friends and rivals and stuff. So everyone gets married at the end. Well, if it's someone you don't want to get married, I think it's you're trying to figure out how to sabotage that and make sure it doesn't get married, or marry the person that you think they should marry. Good society. I wasn't coming to me either. Thank you, William, in the chat.
Thank you, William. That's already much more fun. That already, I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see how that would work. Sabotage.
It feels like it could be that, or Mean Girls, or other. There's a lot. I think social role playing games kind of are going to have a lot of similarities with that stuff. I mean, I don't know that is something that I would personally get into. If you add some zombies or something, maybe. But
have you read Pride and Prejudice and Zombies?
I have not. I think they did a movie, and I watched the movie.
There is a movie, yeah.
And Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer.
Is that a game?
It's a movie. It's a movie.
It's a movie?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I know what I'm tracking down when I get off the internet.
Yeah, they're both of them. They're so terrible in a good way.
It's just the entire Jane Austen game, but you just occasionally roll a d6.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the movie versions of those. I'm all about it. What is your kind of thoughts on a Western RPG? Only because it's such a an American thing, I guess, and and you coming from the UK.
My thoughts in terms of wanting to play it,
just that genre in general.
I think I would love to play. I mean, I'm really excited to play it. The basic rules are out there. I haven't sat down to go through them because I came straight into this project, and we sort of haven't stopped running since. But I mean, the Wild West fascinates me as a non-American, because it's the tiniest window of history. Right. I mean, when we talk about the Wild West, we're talking about 40 years, I think. It's an insanely small time period, and yet it's so iconic as a setting. And I think what I would really love about it is kind of what we were talking about before, is there's a fragility there. You can ride off into the desert and never be seen again, which is what some of those people wanted, right?
Yeah.
Some of those sort of people who headed west, they wanted to be able to just, be master of their own castle. So I think, you're out in the desert, you get bitten by a snake. What do you do? Like I like that. I really like that aspect. And then, like, as you say, like adding zombies. Did you watch any of the what were they called? Critical Role did a really short series of a Western with sort of Lovecrafty edges.
No, but
Uh,
that sounds great. And even
was
like
it was
Deadlands
it
and that
called
kind of stuff.
it might be that system. It might have been called Undead Wood. People in the chat might be able to correct that. I can't remember exactly, but that was really fun. And again, there's that sort of you play into a trope and flip it. Like, I'm a really big fan of any storyline that does that.
Yeah, I love genre mashing.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, and bringing things in, and like we've done quite a few videos where we take something like, well, what if we were going to do, the Wild West and incorporate fantasy elements into it. What does that look like?
Yeah.
Dwarves wielding shotguns, and
Yeah.
it's just a lot of fun train heists and things of that nature that you normally wouldn't experience. Challenger
And
says
I think
Undead Wood. You're
it
correct.
was Undead Wood. Thank
Yeah.
you for that. Yeah, which is a pun so good it hurts. But I think that's good advice for DMs in general. And I think you occasionally see messages from people going, I'm burned out, like I've got no idea where to go next with this. And I think sometimes you can get sucked into looking too hard into looking for inspiration in other D&D content. And in a way that's you're not widening your net. You're just zooming closer and closer in on stuff that's already been gone over before. And I really think, like, if you're struggling, like whether you're writing or just DMing or even coming up with a player concept, go outside of the game and watch a bunch of movies, go to an art gallery, go to a concert, find something from outside that you can bring back in, because otherwise you're just cycling the same water through the reservoir, again and again, and it's going to dry up eventually. And I think genre
go read
mapping.
some Jane Austen.
Yeah, go read some Jane Austen.
Yeah,
there you go. DM tip number 1:
yeah.
Read Jane Austen.
Well, I definitely went through a period where, like, I spent the last 20 years reading pretty much, or 30 years maybe, reading nothing but fantasy, and I'm like, I cannot read another fantasy book ever again. And I started picking up a lot of sci-fi, steampunk. There was a lot of weird fiction that was kind of like Gaslight London mixed in with occult stuff, which is it kind of had some elements of steampunk in there as well. And I felt like doing that really kind of reinvigorated me as far as the creative juices.
Yeah, because I think it can sometimes the thing you're looking for, even if you don't know it, is where are the limitations of this world? Because in a high fantasy game where disguise self and Goodberry are first level spells, the logics of this society make no sense.
Yeah.
There can be no system of justice or politics in a world where someone with access to first level spells can look exactly like someone else. There is no logic to that except full fascism, paranoid CCTV culture. But so high fantasy, in some ways, magic means anything can happen. But if you say okay, now we're in, foggy Victorian London, it's gas lamps. That is the limit of organized technology. At night it gets dark and there is no way, you're not wandering around with a torch. If you shout for help, there is not a policeman on every corner. You've got those limitations, and your players the themes come into that very quickly. I think your players can go, and you with your creativity, sometimes having those walls is actually really great because you can know exactly how far you can go and then stay in that. labyrinth.
So, you're also an actor, right?
I am. Yeah, I trained as an actor in London, which is where I met my wife, who is American, and then we worked out there for a bit, and then she got a TV job in Chicago. So we came out to Chicago, where I met Mike, and we're now in LA, where I'm deeply suspicious of the bright, hot yellow thing in the sky that doesn't seem to go away.
That sounds like a fair thing to be suspicious of. I'm not I'm not very fond of it either. Most of my people come from places where people are very pale, and we don't do well with the sun.
English skin does not do well in California.
Yeah.
You know, if it weren't COVID keeping me inside, it would be other things.
Yeah. Or possibly a vampire. Who knows? So, what is it you want to do out in LA?
So, I mean, I am an actor, but I'm really getting excited about this space. I'm
Yeah.
really enjoying writing and creating. We were talking just before the stream started about how welcoming the TTRPG space is, and sort of how close knit and how generous with people's time and advice, and how quick it is to sort of get in touch with some really, really, incredibly talented people who are willing to collaborate and work together. So I'm really excited to keep going with this. I've got a lot of ideas. I have a plan. I have a dream for an actual system that I'm sort of starting to play with. I started putting stuff out this year on DM's Guild. I think on January the 1st, I was like, I just want to put something out there. So I'm putting out 1-page, homebrew rules. They're pay what you want. They're the idea, to keep it simple, as we said, make the DM's life easier, not harder. And so I'm just playing with putting out little homebrew rules that reward engagement and try and fill some gaps where I haven't necessarily found a satisfying answer in the core rules. So I've got 2 out at the moment. One is called the first one is called What's in the Bag, and it's rules for making luggage a real thing. I've always wondered why the guards let 6 adventurers with glowing backpacks covered in axes in to see the king. I don't think that would fly in a more realistic world. So there's rules for luggage. You get some benefits if you put it down, but then what if it gets stolen? So you can store it in vaults and things. And then the second piece I put out yesterday, actually, is called I Know a Shortcut, and it's optional rules for learning a city. So particularly for rangers who feel like they might be twiddling their thumbs if they're in town, not having their skill sets used, or characters and players who really want to investigate and really learn a new town, or sort of walk the streets of the city and gain some benefit from that. So if you spend some downtime walking around, for example, you learn all the back alleyways, so travel time across town is halved. Or you make friends with a couple of merchants who can provide you a safe place to hide if you need it, that kind of thing. Just rewarding downtime activities, which I think are one of the sort of hidden gems in the rules as written, in the raw rules. Making use of downtime to bed into the world you're in, and rewarding that and giving it some mechanical benefit, I think is my kind of driving force with the stuff I'm putting out at the moment.
How can people find you over there?
I think, if I remember, it's just my name. I think it's just Olo Clark.
Cool. So, Clark over on the DM's Guild if you want more stuff, and pay what you want. So, pay $1 million or nothing. It's pay what you want.
One of those I'd prefer.
Yeah.
I will say right now, those are 2 options. But yeah, it is free because like that's the community, and I was given so much free advice by people when I was starting out. So yeah, I'd love if people do download it for free, I'd love a review, awesome feedback, in lieu of payment. But yeah, check them out.
What what is like a dream project for you to kind of work on?
I can't say that on stream. I can't talk about that right now. What if it, what if it doesn't happen? It makes it a real thing.
Yeah.
What's a dream project? I honestly, I would love to work with. It's more about dream people for me, like out in the space. We've been so lucky with Tavern Tales. We've worked with some really brilliant people. We've worked with people who have we've got the brilliant Mackenzie de Armas, who now works at Wizards and has written for Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft and the Netherdeep book, the new Critical Role, among a bunch of others. We've got the brilliant Kaylee Bray, who does Damsels and Dice and D&D in a Castle, which I think you might be familiar with yourself.
Yep.
We've got Josh Knapp, who's a fantastic DM in demand. We've got people who've written for all corners of the community: adventurers, league content, Knights of the Kitchen Table. We've got people from all over. So it's been a real thrill to work with people sort of who have the experience they have in this world. So there's a bunch of people out there who I would love to get in touch with and work with one day. Like I said, I have a system I'm toying with the ideas of right now, but I don't want to. I don't want to say, because that means A, I have to do it, and B, what if it doesn't happen? I've definitely got dreams.
At a system from the standpoint of a specific genre you want to work in, or certain mechanics you want to implement.
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of sort of Victorian London settings. I think that period of history where modern science is just taking off enough that it's horrific. You've got where the people who are now the giants of everything from psychotherapy through to surgery, they had to start somewhere, and it involved a lot of grave robbing and a lot of arguments about what it meant for religion. And you've got the beginnings of sort of in-house technology. You've got gas lamps, you've got the beginnings of a phone system, but when push comes to shove, it's still a brutal place to live, hideous class divides, all this. And I think as a space to tell stories in, it's a really fertile one. So that's the setting I want to play with. And I want to make it more, I want to bring in that fragility. If I get hit by a train, I can't just use hit dice to, bring it back. And, a little bit of what lurks in the shadows. I think everyone gets more spiritual when the lights go out. I think even the hardiest atheist starts, muttering words under their breath when all the fires go out. So that's the kind of mood I want to play with.
Now, do you want to do stuff that's grounded more historically in realism, or are you looking to put a twist on it?
I'm not looking to stick too hard to that. I have flicking through the Cthulhu, the Call of Cthulhu books, the number of pages on here are all the historical events that happened in 1920, 1921, 1922, and I'm not looking to tell the story of the Jack the Ripper, investigation or anything. I'm not looking to use real people, but that's the sort of mood that I'm looking to play with.
So there's a writer, Mark Hodor, and when I kind of went down that like I need to do something else, it was kind of like alternate fiction is how it started, but then started moving into some other places like occult and steampunk. And it was like Spring Hill Jack was the first book, and
excellent.
And it was like I think the series might be called like The Adventures of Sir Burton and Richard's Sir Burton and Swineborn. And so it's like really cool, like as they introduce all these characters that are real like historical figures, but then they start putting a twist on it. Like it's funny in like in like an offhand kind of like commentary. Like, I don't even think it might have garnered a paragraph or two in this series. They destroy Ireland. So with eugenics and plants. And it's just like,
oh my god,
it's just like, there's a lot of Irish immigrants, and they're like, this is why.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and it's just like an offhand thing.
As an Englishman, that twists all kinds of historical knots. Yeah, the sort of the history of England and Ireland is a brutal one.
Yeah.
There was a game online, and it was a browser game. It was a very funny creation. I'm sure it's still out there. That I used to play for a while. Called it was called Fallen London, which is the idea that London has fallen through the ground and is now in the sort of equivalent of like an Underdark kind of space. And there's these sort of strange Eloy kind of creatures maybe out there, but yeah, London is now completely cut off and is just sort of sinking into this underground lake sort of warren. And again, as a launching point, it's like, brilliant, what's the lore to your world? London exists, it's fallen through the ground.
Yeah.
great, there we go, let's go.
Yeah, so that stuff's a lot of fun. I highly recommend that series, especially if you're looking to do something in that time period and looking for some ideas for twists. There's some really good stuff there. Another good one is Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences. And
never heard of it.
There's 2 authors. And so that's a lot of like occult stuff and some steampunk stuff, and they're a lot of fun.
I love it. Anything with a grimoire, anything with forsaken knowledge, I'm there. We're watching Archive 81 on Netflix right now, which I can thoroughly recommend to anyone with a sort of spooky Lovecraft, found footage interest. It's great. Thoroughly recommend.
Yeah, I'm going to try my wife on that one again. She's already expressed interest in not watching it just from the previews.
We started watching, I think my wife knows a couple of people in it. So I think that's the only reason she was hoodwinked into starting it. I don't think if we'd watched the previews and I'd gone, yeah, let's watch this, I think she would have said, absolutely not.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife does not like horror either, so.
My wife does really well with it. She says she doesn't, but she does really well with them when I actually get her to sort of sit down and watch.
So we are just past the hour mark. Final thoughts before we head on out?
Thank you so much for having me on. This has been a real treat. Nerdarchy was one of the early channels I started watching when I got into the hobby, so it's been a real thrill to come on. And to everyone watching, thank you so much. Check out the book. Let us know what you think. We really want to hear back from people about this. We really want to know. We really want to hear about the subclasses if people try them out. We really want to hear about the mechanical aspects. And yeah, tell us how your Tavern Tales go.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on. It's been great chatting with you. As always, folks, links are in the description. Go click away, follow Alo Clark, and escape playing games throughout the interwebs. Also, we still have that Kickstarter going on, so you can check that out as well. And until next time, stay nerdy.